I gave her my dress.
Still, what's a new frock, eh, Dom?
What's a new frock? About £1,800 when it is designed by Herr Blager. That's it. She's dead meat. I'll kill her. I'll kill her. I'll kill her.
What'll I do when you are far away and I am blue? What'll I do
when I'm alone with only dreams of you that won't come true? What'll I do that won't come true? What'll I do?
I shall never regret having known you.
The strength of passion, the depth of seduction.
It's not the body of a young girl, is it?
Visit me tonight.
You are a monster.
The agony and sweetness of true love.
What proof do you want?
Stendhal's classic Scarlet and Black in 3 parts beginning tonight at 9:05 on BBC1.
They're 30% behind, and Collingwood is about as popular as Captain Hook.
A leader out of touch, his future closing in front of him like a fist.
They're getting ready to junk Collingridge.
You might think that. I'm afraid I couldn't possibly comment.
House of Cards, tomorrow at 10:10 on BBC1.
In 10 minutes on BBC2, a new series of Notes and Queries with Clive Anderson. This is BBC1. Now at 10 to 9, the news with Martin Lewis.
7 people have died in a massacre by Loyalist gunmen at a bar near Londonderry. The Ulster freedom fighters attacked a pub where Catholics and Protestants drank together in friendship. Northern Ireland's police chief calls the killers the scum of the earth. And one other headline, a former KGB general is freed after being questioned by London police about the murder of a Bulgarian dissident 15 years ago. Good evening. 8 people are being questioned tonight about the latest mass murder in Northern Ireland. Loyalist terrorists burst into a pub in County Londonderry, shouted trick or treat, and then opened fire on the Halloween revellers, killing 7 people. Among the dead, 2 childhood sweethearts planning a Christmas engagement. The 81-year-old father of the bar's owner and a 59-year-old mother of 6, whose daughter, a nurse, gave first aid to the wounded. The RUC Chief Constable, Sir Hugh Ansley, visited the scene in the village of Greysteel, east of Londonderry, and promised the killers would be hunted down like the rats they are.
A massacre, the scale and brutality of which was scarcely believable. Relatives, panicking, distraught, searched for family members in the minutes after the attack. Many knew as they arrived. Sons, daughters, husbands, fathers had died. The bar had been full last night when the 2 masked gunmen burst in. This is what it looked like today. Everywhere bullet holes, everywhere blood. They had shot indiscriminately. Eyewitnesses said one of the killers kept firing till his gun was empty, reloaded, then started firing again. Articles of clothing, upturned furniture. People had tried to scramble to safety. There was none. This man, too terrified to be identified, was in the bar. His uncle was shot dead.
I didn't go into the scene about an hour afterwards, and there was bodies everywhere. It was pandemonium. And the whole place was screaming. Everybody was screaming.
In the hours after the shooting, there was a stunned silence as many gathered at the scene. I saw people, police, clergymen, walking around, unable to comprehend quite what had happened. Prayers were said for those inside.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
One local priest said the killers had made the sickest of jokes seconds before pulling the trigger.
As far as I know, the man came in with, or two men came in and said, trick or treat, then sprayed the whole place with bullets.
See 5 bodies lying there. I talked to some poor soul in there, and after speaking to him a minute, he says, that's my wife lying there dead at her feet. And the man was in an absolutely terrible way.
Loyalist gunmen had wanted to kill Catholics. They did. They also killed a Protestant in a bar local people said was mixed. There were 7 dead, the youngest a 19-year-old girl, the oldest a man in his 80s. This morning there was a terrible calm at the scene. Forensic officers were working outside and inside the bar, and another place in the province begins to mark its tragedy with flowers. Kieran O'Doherty's daughter is one of the 6 injured still in hospital. 2 were critical.
In another 5 minutes he went away. There's nothing else, and I shot through both arms and chest.
And a family friend read out a letter from Mrs. Lily Moyne. Her husband John died trying to protect her.
My husband and I had only entered the rising sun a few moments when the gunman appeared. My husband realised what was happening and threw me to the ground to protect me. Had it not been for his quick action and bravery, I too would have been killed.
The RUC Chief Constable said last week the situation was not out of control. So did he still think that?
The situation is not out of control, and as I've said before, it will not get out of control. It is serious, it's very serious, and that's why I addressed you personally this morning.
The Chief Constable then added a personal comment.
Those who are carrying out these acts, these are the scum of the earth. They have, as a colleague said in Belfast, they have a bloodlust, and some of them certainly appear to be psychotic killers.
The families, especially the families.
Bishop Edward Daly led special services at a parish church nearby, another community shattered by events. Funerals are planned for the next few days. The past 9 days have seen terrible bloodshed in the province, and there seems no end to it. The terrorists on both sides appear addicted to the killing. Matthew Emery-Waller, BBC News, Greysteel, Londonderry.
The Prime Minister described the killings as yet another evil act of butchery, and he appealed to everyone in Northern Ireland to show no tolerance towards terrorists. The Labour leader, John Smith, called it yet another foul example of mindless violence, and the Liberal Democrat leader, Paddy Ashdown, said the killings gave a further horrifying twist to the tragic vortex of violence. Gerry Adams of Sinn Féin said the current situation gave tragic emphasis to the urgent need for a process to end conflict and division.
Gerry Adams may genuinely want an end to all violence, but for now the IRA campaign continues. A policeman was critically injured in a single-shot sniper attack in Newry this afternoon as he helped man a vehicle checkpoint. The scale and intensity of recent violence has led inevitably to renewed calls for internment. And the Northern Ireland Secretary, while meeting local people in Greysteel this afternoon, markedly changed the tone of his previous comments on the possibility of its introduction.
I hear what the people say. It is very much the duty of government to listen to what a stricken community is calling for. I am fortified in my belief that internment should remain available to the government, and that is why year after year we have insisted upon renewing the act that makes it available as a course of action.
It would still seem, though, that internment really is an option of last resort. Other political ways of ending the violence are what the British and Irish governments, along with their condemnation of this latest atrocity, have been addressing. The Irish Prime Minister particularly shocked.
It's just the latest...
Yes, sure, absolutely.
So dreadful, it's hard to put words in there, isn't it? It's the latest in a list of slaughtering of innocent people from both sides, both communities who went out for their normal Saturday night's entertainment. It's another example of indiscriminate killing of the innocent. And I want to see both communities reject violence, reject it once and for all, and join us all in the search for peace.
Mr. Reynolds, in a series of interviews, said that search now had to accelerate. The SDLP leader agreed, and he put the onus on the British and Irish governments.
I'm glad that the two governments
are going to take the initiative, but I hope they understand that it's not something they can keep postponing for months. They should begin that initiative immediately.
John Major and Mr. Reynolds agreed a set of principles at last week's EC summit they hope can start a real political process leading to peace. But unionists are sceptical, to say the least, still calling for the Republic to drop the claim in its constitution to the territory of Northern Ireland.
That would take away any legitimacy which the IRA has. It would destroy their hopes of getting anywhere. It also would destroy any strength that Protestant paramilitaries have in the argument that we're going to be destroyed and put into a United Ireland, because the United Ireland matter would then be put beyond all reach.
The people of Northern Ireland are expecting more wreaths and very little immediate political progress. Dennis Murray, BBC News, Belfast.
24 people have died in the violence in Northern Ireland in the last 9 days, the victims drawn almost equally from the Catholic and Protestant communities. Well, I'm joined now from Belfast by our Northern Ireland security correspondent, Brian Rowan. Brian, could this latest killing be considered full and final revenge for the Shankill bombing?
Well, such is the current climate. I don't think anyone would dare predict that this is the last we're going to see of this type of violence. You're right that built into what happened last night was this desire on the part of the UFF for reprisal. But I think to put this current phase of Loyalist violence into its proper context, you have to go back before the Shankill bombing, when the UFF was already involved in probably the most concerted period of violent activity we've seen from that quarter in recent years. There were numerous attacks against the nationalist community, and the UFF linked that violence to the Hume Adams talks. So while the Shankill bombing has undoubtedly aggravated the situation, there was already an extremely high threat there before that.
What form is the security response to this upsurge of violence taking?
Well, the Chief Constable has moved extra police officers and soldiers to Belfast, and the overt security presence has also been raised outside the city. But we've seen on numerous occasions before that no matter what resources are used, the different terrorist factions find ways of working around the security cordon. And because the situation has arrived at the point now where the UFF has declared war, if you like, on the entire Catholic community, you're in a situation where there is a vast range of potential targets to protect, and really it's impossible for the police and army to protect the Catholic community in its entirety.
Has the strength and persistence of the UFF surprised the security forces?
I don't think surprised, because the security forces have watched this organisation develop over the past 2 or 3 years or so, and intelligence available to the RUC would give it a fair insight into what's going on. But as the Chief Constable was pointing out today again, there is a vast difference between intelligence and evidence. In terms of the UFF, it's an open secret that there is a younger and more ruthless leadership in place. The organisation is considered more cohesive. Less information is leaking out to the security forces. There's no shortage of numbers, and the organisation is certainly better armed than it was up until a few years ago.
Brian, thanks very much indeed. Other news now. A former KGB general has been released on police bail after being held by London detectives for nearly 24 hours. Oleg Kalugin, who was detained when he arrived at Heathrow Airport yesterday evening, is thought to have been questioned about the murder in 1978 of the Bulgarian dissident Georgy Markov.
Former KGB general Oleg Kalugin, filmed here in Moscow in 1990, was arrested on his arrival at Heathrow to take part in a film about MI6 for the BBC's Panorama programme. According to the Russian embassy, he was handcuffed by the arresting officers. He was released this evening from this police station near Buckingham Palace on condition he returns to answer further questions on Thursday. Georgy Markov, a leading Bulgarian dissident who worked for the BBC's World Service, died 4 days after being jabbed in the leg by an umbrella near a bus stop on Waterloo Bridge in 1978. It's believed that the umbrella's tip contained this tiny poisoned pellet. A spokesman at the Foreign Office said tonight it was understood the police wanted to question Kalugin about an interview in which he was quoted as saying he was involved with the murder. In an edition of the Mail on Sunday in April, General Kalugin is quoted as saying he helped the Bulgarians plan the assassination on the orders of the then head of the KGB, Yuri Andropov, later the Soviet president. Chairman Andropov told me, "Kalugin, you take charge of this, you do it." Tonight, the Russian embassy said Kalugin denied any involvement in the Markov murder. Former General Oleg Kalyugin was drummed out of the KGB after accusing it of obstructing political reform and took the organization to court for unfair dismissal. He now hopes to be elected to Parliament in Russia as a reformist. Mike Smart, BBC News.
The Chancellor, Kenneth Clarke, has said Britain's economic recovery is still not strong enough. Speaking on the BBC's Breakfast with Frost, Mr. Clarke said he agreed with the Governor of the Bank of England that current conditions do not justify a cut in interest rates. The Transport Secretary, John McGregor, has dismissed as ridiculous an estimate that the government's subsidy to the railways will double in the first year of privatisation. An interdepartmental committee report obtained by the BBC's On the Record programme says rail services will need £2 billion of public subsidy in the next financial year. But although Mr. McGregor said the government would continue to subsidise loss-making lines, he said the amount would be on a much lesser scale than £2 billion. The film industry around the world has been paying tribute to Federico Fellini, who died today in Rome. The director, described as original and uncompromising, suffered heart failure 2 years ago. Fellini's best-known works included La Dolce Vita, about the decadence of Roman society in the 50s, and the semi-autobiographical 8 1/2. And one of Hollywood's brightest young stars, River Phoenix, has died at the age of 23. Phoenix, whose films include Stand By Me and My Own Private Idaho, collapsed after leaving a nightclub. And tonight's main news again. 7 people died when Loyalist gunmen opened fire in a pub near Londonderry. Police are tonight questioning 8 people. And that's the BBC News tonight. Good night.
Good evening. The weather's been pretty uniform across the country today for most of us. Dry, but on the cloudy side. Not dry everywhere. There was enough drizzle around Newcastle to add up to just less than 1/10 of an inch. No great range in temperatures, the coldest 6, the warmest, if you can call it that, 11. But it was down to Guernsey we had to look for the sunshine. Most of the rest of the country is now full of cloud. And what thinner bits of cloud there are, what holes there are going to tend to continue filling in overnight. It's going to turn increasingly misty. There'll be quite a lot of fog over the hilly areas. Some southern districts also seeing fog patches low down too. And as all this happens, we're going to see rather more in the way of drizzly weather moving in, especially to the hills and in eastern areas. The blanket of cloud keeping temperatures at between 5 and 7 Celsius for most of us tonight. But any spells of clearer weather in western Scotland will let the temperature drop down to around 2 or 3. For the beginning of the week, the cloudy high is still with us. This weather front may just bring an isolated shower to the far southwest late in the day. For most of us, it's going to be a familiar story, though, with a rather grey and misty start to the day. Western districts of Wales, England and Scotland stand a better chance of some bright or sunny spells, though. For most of us, rather cloudy and still on the cool side.
I'm a director of MI5, the equivalent to a police commander. Prove it.
Are you responsible for those men and know what they were doing? Mm-hmm. Will you provide me with evidence that was legal?
Superintendent Clarke will deal with those police involved. Angela Berridge here will deal with the MI5 side of the affair.
Let's hope it's the beginning of a fruitful partnership.
Yeah.
Between the Lines, Tuesday at 9:30 on BBC1.
Power and Passion now on BBC1. Ewan McGregor's seductive charms overwhelmed the boudoirs of 19th century France in a 3-part dramatisation of Stendhal's classic Scarlet and Black.